It is my pleasure now to introduce Ambassador Kolinda Grabar-Kitarovic, who has just in July taken up her position as NATO's Assistant Secretary General for Public Diplomacy, and she is the first woman in that role. But she is certainly not new to transatlantic activities. She is from Croatia and was Croatia's Minister of Foreign Affairs and European Integration, and she was also Croatia's ambassador to the United States for a term. So she is, as I said, very familiar with transatlantic relations, and we're very pleased to have her in this role, and we're interested to hear what she has to tell us.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to say good morning, hello to all of you in Ottawa. I am so sorry that I cannot be with you in person because it's always such a pleasure to travel to Ottawa. It always brings back fond memories. But nevertheless, I am happy that we were able to organize this video teleconference, at least, so that on our behalf here from the headquarters, from NATO headquarters in Brussels, I can convey a few messages and give you actually an outline of what is ahead of us. I know that the theme of the conference is NATO's new strategic concept and alliance for the 21st century, but I will not be talking about the strategic concept itself. I think that we've discussed that quite extensively. What I would like to talk about today is actually what is ahead of us, and especially with the view of the upcoming summit in Chicago in May of 2012. I hope that in preparing the key deliverables of the Chicago summit and especially in communicating them to the audiences inside the alliance, but also to our partners and to third audiences, we will continue to enjoy your support, and that together we will be promoting joint activities that will increase awareness about security and about the relevance of NATO for security of the North Atlantic area, for North America, but also for European allies as well. Looking at how NATO is adapting to a changing global security environment, and as the title of this conference suggests, is an alliance for the 21st century, I just want to have a brief look back in the past, and then would like to concentrate more on the future. NATO was created in 1949 to safeguard the freedom and security of all its members by political and military means. That fundamental purpose set down in the Washington Treaty endures. NATO exists to protect our freedom and our security. Yet, while the purpose remains the same, the ways in which our freedom and security might be threatened have changed. Conventional threats persist, but are aided by new technologies. Proliferation, international terrorism, the instability of fragile states, and the danger posed by cyber attacks are a few of the security concerns on which the alliance is focused today. To be effective in this changing world, NATO, heads of state and government, agreed to the new strategic concept in Lisbon in November 2010. The strategic concept outlines the threats we face and are likely to face in the coming years and identifies the core tasks that NATO will continue to fulfill: collective defense, crisis management, and cooperative security. It emphasizes the importance of both hard power and soft power. Collective defense, the commitment of Article 5 that an attack on one member of the alliance is an attack on all, remains at the heart of NATO's mission. It is this commitment that was invoked following the September 11 attacks on the United States. Crisis management, whether before, during, or after conflicts, is essential to protecting the freedom and security of our members, as well as safeguarding the values that bind us together. Operation Unified Protector, the NATO mission that was recently concluded in Libya, is a clear and powerful example of the essential role NATO plays in this regard. Cooperative security, working with partner countries and international organizations, is essential in an increasingly interconnected world. There are 28 members of NATO, but 49 countries contributing to the ISAF mission in Afghanistan. In Libya, NATO worked with several regional partners to protect the Libyan people from tragedy. The groundwork laid in Lisbon is guiding the work NATO is doing today. When NATO leaders gather in Chicago in May of next year, they will assess the progress being made toward a more committed, more capable, and more connected alliance. Therefore, commitments, capability, and connectivity will be the underlying themes of the Chicago summit that will, again, stress the transatlantic solidarity as the glue that holds alliance together, and of course, NATO's proven reliability. In Chicago, NATO's public diplomacy will emphasize the enduring relevance of the transatlantic link and illustrate that Europe and America are effective and steadfast partners in global security. It will demonstrate the value of Europe as a partner to the US and Canada, and it will show European commitment to fair burden sharing. Now, to talk about the three principles, commitment, capability, and connectivity, what being committed means. When we talk about commitments, we're talking about operations, but also about principles. NATO can play a unique and essential role because its members, its partners, and its adversaries understand that the alliance is committed to the principles of freedom, democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Our operations are undertaken to enhance security and defend these principles. Over 130,000 brave men and women are serving in Afghanistan, working to bring security and stability. The process of transition from NATO-led security to Afghan-led security is well underway. And we are working with Afghanistan to agree on a strategic partnership that will endure through 2014 and beyond. For me, communicating Afghanistan is especially important, and here we can distinguish two basic audiences. The Afghan audiences, whom we have to reassure of our commitment and that they will not be abandoned yet again, and our own audiences, whom we have to reassure of what we have done in Afghanistan, of the groundwork that we have laid for the Afghans themselves to take ownership of the processes in their own country. In Libya, our mission to protect the people of that nation from a tyrannical leader has come to a close. But our commitment to the future of that country remains. NATO has a unique tool set that can support that country in its efforts to rebuild if Libya requests our support. In the Horn of Africa, NATO is working to counter piracy, and in Europe, NATO continues to keep peace in Kosovo, as well as provide counter-terrorist patrols in the Mediterranean Sea. And while our commitment to these missions and to our principles is strong, true strength requires more than commitments. It requires the capacity to act on those commitments. Understanding the threats we face is of limited benefit if we're not equipped to deal with them. Particularly in today's environment of economic hardship, it is all the more important to look to how we can acquire and maintain the right capabilities for the tasks that we face. NATO is doing this through smart defense, and smart defense means spending better. By prioritizing, specializing, and seeking multinational solutions, the alliance can provide together what its individual members would not be able to afford alone. One of the capabilities on which we'll focus in Chicago is missile defense. The decision to pursue an alliance missile defense capability at Lisbon is beginning to show fruit as a number of nations have agreed to host key elements of this NATO missile defense system. As we build our capacities to be able to support our commitments, we realize that we need to do this alone. Connecting with other countries and organizations will further enhance our ability to safeguard our freedom and security. What being connected means. The interconnectedness of the world we live in is, I'm sure, not lost to any of you. As I speak to you in Ottawa from Brussels, someone might be reading about it on a blog in South Africa. Financial markets in Japan react to news in Portugal. And melting ice in the Arctic prompts attention in Southeast Asia. We are undeniably linked. The threats we face are decreasingly contained by borders, and the solutions to these threats must similarly cross traditional boundaries. NATO has a proven framework for partner nations to contribute to international efforts and will continue to enhance this framework. In Afghanistan, it is not only the British and the Polish, but the Australians, the El Salvadorians, and the Mongolians that are working to make that mission a success. And while we are connected, we need to continue to both broaden and deepen the connections we have with partners, old and new, so that we can work together to combat the challenges that face us all. Ladies and gentlemen, NATO has for over 60 years played a unique and essential role in safeguarding the freedom and security of its members. It has adapted to new challenges and will continue to adapt as the realities of the 21st century become clear. Next May in Chicago, NATO will demonstrate that a path chosen at Lisbon was the right one, that an alliance more committed, more capable, and more connected will continue to defend the freedoms that we hold so dear. NATO today is an anchor of stability, not only for its member nations, but for so many others beyond our borders. And it is this alliance that the 21st century needs. I thank you for your attention, and I don't know whether that has been foreseen, but I will be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions? And if you do have a question, please walk up to the microphone. Questions? All right. Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
My question concerns all three presenters, and from what I gather from this panel is that NATO's role is going to be towards development and long-term focus. And Dr. Bannister raised this point earlier in the previous panel, that the ISAF mission has to have a centuries-long perspective potentially. So how well is NATO suited to have a generational impact or a generational perspective to its policies? And is it better to approach this through Canadian foreign policy, for instance, on a national level, or is supranationalism in the style of the EU more suited towards this kind of policy making?
Could you hear the...
Well, thank you very much. And unfortunately, I did not listen to all the panelists before, but concerning Afghanistan, I just returned about a month ago from a week-long visit to the country, which was very important for me to get an insight into the actual situation on the ground and to lay the groundwork for a refreshed strategic communications framework on how we will communicate, but not just how we will communicate, but what we will continue to be doing in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the media today are preoccupied with the spectacular attacks, the asymmetric attacks that have no significant military value, but that do capture media headlines and that introduce enough doubt among Afghans themselves as far as the capabilities of their own security forces are concerned, and of course as to the efficiency of the International Security Assistance Force, of ISAF. And on the other hand, in our own audiences in allied countries and in third audiences, they also produce doubt whether we have achieved anything in Afghanistan and whether there is any point of staying beyond 2014. In my perspective is that in communicating what is going on in Afghanistan, we need to move in the areas, into the areas of presenting what the actual achievements are beyond the military security operation that we are conducting there. So to communicate not just the transition of the security situation onto the Afghan National Forces in tranches in different areas of the country, but really to communicate what groundwork we have laid for other processes to develop, such as government institutions, building of government institutions, good governance, progress in education, in healthcare, building of the infrastructure, etc. I know that this is not, of course, an area where NATO can do a lot. We do have our so-called Silk Afghanistan project, where we are actually providing broadband internet for 18 Afghan universities at the time, and we will be expanding that program as information, being informed, of getting information into Afghanistan, but also giving a platform for Afghans themselves to speak about the changes in Afghanistan, the changes that are going on, I think are very important for everyone to understand why it is so important not to abandon Afghanistan, but really to stay with those people beyond 2014. Of course, it's nobody's intention to interfere into the so-called nation building. I think stable institutions should be our goal. And cooperation with the United Nations, with the European Union, but also with NGOs and many other stakeholders who have so much experience in these institution building areas and helping the civil society also to grow and flourish and assist the processes in their own country will be very important. And I think that this is what we all should be doing also, to encourage other stakeholders to be more active and to plan beyond 2014. And what I said earlier in my opening remarks is to reassure Afghans that we will continue to assist them after 2014. Because I'm afraid that if the message that they are getting, or at least interpreting that they're getting, is that we will be out of Afghanistan in 2014, that might influence the processes and make some of the processes, such as the number of kids who go to school, irreversible, or gender issues, the rights of women and children, or healthcare. And nobody wants to go back to the situation pre-2001. And again, in communicating this to our own audiences, I think we need to link it. We need to link Afghanistan to our own security, and we need to demonstrate what is it that matters. That going back to an Afghanistan, a pre-2001 Afghanistan is not an option. That we don't want to see Afghanistan that again will be harboring terrorists, but we want to see Afghanistan on the path of progress, and first and foremost in charge of all of these processes in their own country and building a better future for all of their citizens.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions? Yes. Okay. Is there any other questions?
Thank you very much. I don't know if this falls within your domain, but at all the conferences I've been at recently, the big elephant in the room is fiscal constraints that are going to be imposed by the present economic environment in which we live. I was in Halifax at the weekend on the Security Council, and there were a lot of NATO representatives there, and obviously the United States Secretary of Defense. And the words on everybody's lip is there are going to be significant cuts to defense. I mean, really brutal cuts in some cases. So obviously NATO is dependent upon what its member states do, but as an organization, as you look at going to Chicago, will NATO itself bring forward a plan to the member states as to the efficiencies which it will achieve within its own operations so that it will be able to continue to do those very complicated things which you referred to in your speech, recognizing that you're going to have a lot less money and a lot less assets to be able to deliver on very complex environments in which you operate?
Thank you very much for your question. Indeed, it's very timely and very valid, very current at this time in these times of economic crisis and austerity in all of our member countries, where everybody is tightening their budgets and reducing defense spending. Therefore, NATO will be addressing these issues, obviously, in Chicago in May 2012. I don't think that we can avoid them at all, but we will be addressing them in a positive way in demonstrating to our publics and demonstrating to publics outside of the alliance what is the added value of the alliance in saving resources. So capabilities in smart defense will be one of the prominent topics, as I've already outlined it, as well as deterrence and defense posture review, in addition to missile defense, which has become one of the current topics. But nevertheless, demonstrating that to fulfill its essential purpose of safeguarding the security of its member nations, the alliance definitely needs to modernize its capabilities. And in doing that, we have to be mindful of the resources in the sense that the security, the economic crisis does not become a security crisis. And in addition to that, to demonstrate that to get better value for money, NATO needs to prioritize, specialize, and foster multinational solutions. This will improve the transatlantic burden sharing among allies as well. And it will be a smart commitment to deliver the capability improvements that NATO nations need. So in that sense, we are looking at a few specific projects that I cannot discuss right now because we're still in the process of formulating the Chicago deliverables. But definitely this capability sharing of having a regional or not necessarily regionally based, but certainly a number of different countries who would invest into joint capabilities in order to save money or get the best value for the money invested. As we all know, not every country needs the full range of capabilities from an army to a naval force to an air force, especially when you look at Europe and the configuration of Europe and the sizes of the countries. But this does not only concern sharing among countries, but looking at projects that the development of technology allow us, of course, to not just gain ground on the potential battlefields, but really to have the kind of smart defense that will avoid civilian casualties or casualties for the alliance, and that will be that will use to the fullest the technological advances in order to for them to be applied and to use technology also as a cost-saving mechanism.
Okay. And could I ask, I will know this person, but I should have asked you to identify yourselves so that our speaker knows who is speaking. Thank you. Julie.
Good afternoon in Brussels. Thank you very much for contributing to our program this morning here in Ottawa. I'm Julie Lindhout, the president of the ACC. Yesterday, I received an email from a representative of one of the diasporas in Canada who said, is NATO not going to be saying anything in Chicago about enlargement? We haven't heard anything. Is there any kind of progress being made with some of the other communities? And what is NATO doing in the whole area of enlargement? I wonder if you could comment on that.
Yes, thank you for that question. That question indeed is on the mind of course, several prospective members. And the fact that there are countries out there and a number of countries who would like to become members of the alliance, I think is an additional proof of the value of the alliance and of the standing of the alliance among the prospective countries, partners and potential members. Enlargement will not be one of the prominent topics simply because there is not a great number of countries who could accede at this time or who could be invited into NATO membership. So looking individually, what I think should be done is, of course, stress again the open door policy. I think that policy is very important. It has been important, especially in the neighborhood where I come from in Southeast Europe, as a strong catalyst for reforms in Southeast Europe, not just military, but really political, judiciary, economic, and all the other reforms. And we need to keep that perspective alive, not just for the rest of the countries in the Balkans, but beyond that as well. How exactly that will be framed, I cannot say at this time. It's still rather early. But also having in mind that this is the first summit in the US after the historic 1999 Washington summit, I think that enlargement has to be mentioned in one way or another, and certainly it will be.
Any other questions? Yes, go ahead. We have probably couple more short questions. Go ahead, please. Yeah. Just identify yourself, please.
Hi, my name is James. I'm a student at Carleton University here in Ottawa. I was just wondering if you could comment on a criticism of NATO that I'm sure you've heard before, and that's that it's become a two-tier alliance, or maybe always has been. I know Robert Gates, at the end of his tenure, spoke pretty explicitly about how some countries are carrying a much heavier burden in NATO operations than others. And even in Canada, we hear that we played an oversized role in the Libya mission, which kind of implies that other countries didn't play a full role. And so moving towards the Chicago summit, I was just wondering, are there any like concrete plans to explicitly state what is required of NATO countries when there is a mission, or is really the only possibility for NATO kind of a participate as you wish type of forum where countries seem to be able to choose the amount of their involvement in which missions they actually decide to participate in? So if you could just comment on that.
Yes, of course. Thank you for the question. As you know, NATO is an alliance that is based on the principle of consensus. So decisions are made on the basis of no countries opposing the decision or coming to an agreement from whichever perspective you want to look at it. So basically, the alliance cannot prescribe to any member country what level of participation they will be taking in a certain operation. Of course, the fact of the matter whether they will or will not participate and to what extent they will participate very much depends not just on their own political decision, but really on the capacities and capabilities from financial to human resources to the technology and armaments that they have at their disposal. Of course, the principle, one of the underlying principles of the alliance should also be solidarity. That with that goes also the principle of burden sharing and of capabilities as well. It is no secret that the United States is one of the countries that has the greatest capabilities. Canada is also among the top tier in the alliance. But this talk about a two-tiered or a multi-tiered alliance is something that has been discussed for, I would say, forever. And instead of discussing whether we have a two-tier or multi-tier alliance, I think that a discussion that is more channeled into this reinforced transatlantic cohesion and burden sharing of what everybody is doing, what is in their power to be doing, to be sharing the burden is a more constructive approach. I already mentioned that the issue of the transatlantic solidarity, of this reinforced transatlantic cohesion, and of the relevance of Europe for North American security and of what Europe is doing as a partner to the US and Canada to show their commitment will be an important topic in Chicago as well. I think a lot of it will revolve also around the questions that you have asked yourself, that a lot of the people in the US audiences will be posing the same question. So yes, indeed, we are getting ready to answer those questions. But I think that the OUP indeed is a pretty good example of burden sharing. In the beginning, the US capabilities, especially with respect to surveillance and intelligence gathering, such as drones and other technical capabilities, were very important. But later on, the European allies and other allies, including Canada, were able to actually get into the lead of the operation. And many European participants, many European partners were actually, I wouldn't say singled out, but pointed to as having significant participation and actually contributing very much to the success of the operation. Of course, everybody's now looking at that operation, the duration of which was relatively short, as an example where we should learn from. So we at the headquarters as well are in the process of the Libya lessons learned exercises in different areas, from military participation to communications. And I'm sure that we will draw a lot of lessons for Libya. But I think that also Libya, or the OUP, has also heralded that new trend in other partners taking over the responsibility and sometimes even lead in operations or different parts or segments, elements of operation that will continue to be explored and discussed within NATO.
Madam Ambassador, my name is Kai Kuhn. I'm the German defense attaché here in Ottawa. My question is, could you give us an idea about the relationship between NATO and the European Union and what needs to be done to improve that relationship? Thank you.
Thank you. There are a lot of areas where EU and NATO can cooperate. I mentioned Afghanistan as being maybe at this point the best example where the EU can actually take over with their ample experience in good governance, in building the institutions that are aimed at the security of the civilians, protection of the borders, fighting corruption, etc. In cooperating with the European Union, as you will know, we are somewhat restrained by the Turkish position. So we are looking at ways how to overcome that problem, how to go beyond that problem, and how to improve the cooperation in both ways, but also how to promote the role of Turkey as one of our valued allies in cooperating with the European Union in trying to get beyond and trying to assist in resolving some of the issues that have burdened the relationship a little bit. But I am very confident that the future of cooperation of NATO and EU really holds solid ground, and that there will be many more areas where we can continue to cooperate, and where the EU can actually build upon what the circumstances or the situation that NATO has allowed for, that has helped to create the circumstances for military and security conditions that allow for economic development and building of civil societies. I'm also looking forward to seeing what the EU role in Libya will be. As NATO, we're looking towards the next summit in Chicago. We hope that Libya might be one of the newest partners, that they will that in that way we will continue also to assist Libya in the areas where we can, mostly in military restructuring and in security issues. However, again, there are multiple opportunities for the European Union to give a great contribution in the civilian sectors.
Madam Ambassador, on behalf of the Atlantic Council of Canada, I would like to thank you for your contribution to our program. We will be continuing to discuss for the rest of the day a number of the issues that you have raised, and we hope that we can inform our publics and prepare the way for the summit in Chicago, and we look forward to hearing the results of that when that occurs. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.